channel, starting things out. Made a couple of videos early before just testing out the camera. And I'll test out the audio, of course. Just really driving around Sydney, mainly driving around Sydney. I'm a truck driver, and figured there'd be some people that want to get into truck driving and want to know what it's like a bit. And I have to try and get a better camera when I can, but it kind of looks just like a dash cam at the moment. But do what I can there. Yep. Sort of just looks like a bit of a dash cam at the moment, but this is what we have to work with at this point in time, so we'll just do what we can. Right now I'm driving from sort of around Menai somewhere, Lucas Heights, I think. Lucas Heights to Kurnell, so mainly just driving through the Sutherland Shire. Dash cam footage, sort of looking visual. The reason I started this channel, like I said, was just to give people an idea of what it looks like driving a truck, and maybe people want to get into it. I've seen a couple of videos on different channels of people driving in different parts of the world, and maybe people want to see what it's like driving around Sydney. So here we go. Let's get back onto the road. Sorry if it's a bit shaky. Like I said, it's just a bit of an amateur setup, but got to start somewhere, as they say. Driving a Mercedes 2165 model truck, 2016 model, I believe. I work for a company, it's not my truck, so just waiting to get back out into the road here. Just tipped off some material. There's another video that'll go up of me tipping. So here we go. Just getting out to the main road here now. Let's see here. Should be doing this all day. Just running back and forth from Kurnell to Lucas Heights, back and forth. That's the thing about truck driving. You kind of got to make what you can of it. For some people it might get pretty boring at times, so that's why it's good to sort of listen to podcasts. You know, I'm sure most parts of the world it's the same, where you listen to the radio a few days in a row, and you find that you're listening to the same songs over and over again. So that's where YouTube is good. You know, and your other podcast providers and things like that. I'm just on YouTube at the moment. Just slowly trying to build up, and we'll see what happens. You know, I like driving trucks. It's a good job, easy job. Worked in construction, and you know, done some hard labor sort of jobs. It's always cold outside in the winter, and like extremely hot in the summer. When you get to be in the truck, you sort of just get to kick back and, you know, like I said, put on some podcasts or maybe the radio. Just enjoy your day. It's obviously not so easy to drive a truck. You know, sometimes there are some sticky situations, lots of traffic, maybe some hard to maneuver areas. But once you get the hang of it, you know, you get quite comfortable, and you just have to remember to just take it easy on the road, especially on sort of wet, foggy days like today. Sort of clearing up now, 8:30 in the morning, Sydney time, Sydney, Australia. believe I'm on now. So I think this podcast will sort of be not so much just about trucking, but I think just anything and everything that comes to mind. Sort of, there's no limitations when you're on the road. Some people like listening to the AM radio and talk back, and well, in Australia it's called AM, which is like the talk back. Ooh, not there. You have to be careful in the truck because you can't really make split decisions. You have to sort of understand what you're doing a little while back on the road, If you try and make that late sharp turn, it's only going to end up bad. That's standard procedure for truck drivers. You kind of just have to plod along and slowly and easily, and it shouldn't never be a rush. Sometimes you do see truck drivers rushing around. There's different ways to be paid driving trucks. Some people like myself get paid at an hourly rate, which is probably the best way to do it, as long as you've got full-time work, of course. Other people, they get paid for the day, which is to an extent the worst way it could be, because you might make a few $100s in a day, for the day I should say. Let's just say, for example, you make $300 as a sole trader on an ABN. If you work 4 or 5 hours or less, 6 hours even, great. $300, you break that down, it's a great rate. But if you find yourself, like most truck drivers, doing 8, 10, 12 hours a day, that $300, when you break it down, you're not really making that much. And it's an ABN, which means you got to pay your own super, you got to pay your own tax. If you're sick, you don't get paid for a day off. When the companies you work for might go on the Christmas break, or public holidays, you don't get paid for them. So when you break it all down, you're really not doing as well as what some people think truck drivers can make, and they can make quite a lucrative amount. It just depends on who you work for or what contracts you have if you work for yourself. And then there's the tonnage rate. So there's the hourly rate, there's the day rate, and then there's getting paid per ton of material that you cart. And that can be lucrative. You definitely get a handsome rate per load or per ton. However, you really have to work hard. You really have to push, and it's a lot of the time it's those guys that are the ones that are sort of always in a rush, because it really comes down to however much you do in a day will determine how much you get paid. But those guys, especially if they own their own trucks, if they're working for a good contract, and they're busy, they can make $1,000 minimum a day, which sounds great. You take away your tax, you take away your fuel expenses, you take away your tolls. Especially driving in Sydney, there's some extensive tolls on the road. You just got to pay to drive on the road. Registration, insurance isn't enough. Paying for your fuel isn't enough. They want you to pay toll after toll after toll. So you might drive on a motorway or a freeway, depending on what they're called, wherever you live in the world. And for trucks, it's about $20 to get on. There might be another toll point somewhere along the motorway, so that's another $20. And generally speaking, when you get off the motorway, there is another toll there. So let's just say there's 2 tolls for your run to the job from the quarry or the plant. That's $40 you're paying just to get to the job, $40 you're paying to get back to the quarry, and so forth. So you might make, for example, let's say $200 a load, roughly, maybe give or take. But then you make that $200 and then you take away, let's not really say take away fuel or anything like that, because overall in a week you might fill up once or twice depending on your truck, which can be around $1,000 or more for the two tanks worth of fuel. But just with the tolls in itself, let's say it's $40 to the job and $40 back for the two tolls. That's $80 every load that you're losing to the motorway. A lot of drivers in Sydney, they will not take the motorways, which they're sort of insisted on doing. However, and that's a good rate, you might make $200 per load. If you're only making, say, $100-150 per load, if that, then you've lost $80. So you're not making much. And the way that I can only speak for Sydney roads, the way that the tolls have been set up, it's pretty expensive, so if you are going to go that route, you do have to make sure you're working for a good contractor that is paying you a handsome amount, or at least a significant amount that's substantial enough to cover your expenses. As I drive now, I'm just driving over Bengal Bypass. It sort of attaches Menai to Sutherland, but it's all considered part of the Sutherland Shire. This bridge has been here for a while now, but you used to have to drive down. If you can see the sort of trees over there, it's a windy road to go down and then come back up. There's another windy road. There's a river underneath. I'm not quite sure what river that is. It might be, I'm not sure if it's the Georges River or the Cooks River. It might be the Georges, but I'm not too familiar with the waterways to sort of give a specific answer on the water underneath. But it's not just about truck driving. We might talk about some sports, some new movies coming out, different TV shows, maybe current events in the world, which I'm not too sure about. I'm just starting out on YouTube, so I've had the channel as just a viewer for many years. I was DJ and music producer many years ago now, or not many, but a fair few years ago now, and a lot of the DJ mixes I did, YouTube would cancel them or take them down because of copyright infringements and things like that, which is understandable and fair enough. But pretty much the channel has just been about watching videos as opposed to making videos. So when it comes to this aspect of YouTube, I'm very new. I guess at this point it's still a learning process, but you won't know unless you try, and you'll never work it out if you never fail and get back up and try again. So you just gotta keep at it. A bit of a cliche, but keep on trucking. Oh yeah. But it's good. Easy job. I was actually in plumbing for about 5 years, ended up with arthritis. It was a bit of a hard time for me because I didn't have much of an education in school, and got into an apprenticeship, which turned out to be, how can I put it, somewhat damaging to my body. And I spent a lot of time just limping around and in pain, and Not to say that my life was any worse than anyone else's, but I didn't want to be limping around forever and always be sore and losing jobs because, for the days I would take off, I would go and get another job and I wouldn't tell them about my arthritis. And then, a couple of weeks later, I'd be having days off because of the pain, and, it'd be, it turns out I've got arthritis. And, I don't know how many employers I said, that little story to, but, I was young, my early 20s, and, I considered it to be a big taboo trying to tell an employer that you have arthritis and you're supposed to be doing a very physical manual laboring job. So I, sort of just went around in that circle until I was about 5 years into it, when I was about 24. After that, I used to make a lot of beats, and when I used to do that, I thought, well, how about I try getting into some sort of engineering role, and so I got a diploma in sound production, and I was DJing, which is all well and good, but by the end of my course I was 25 or almost 26. I was a DJ making about $100 a week, just doing backyard parties and birthday parties in function centers, in bars and pubs, things like that. So not really, and of course you got to start at the bottom and sort of make your way up and everything, but at the time of my age, I couldn't really rely on living off about $100 a week. So I got back into construction. I was form working. I worked for a good friend of mine, or it was actually just coincidence. So we were on the phone one night, and he said, "Look, man," he said, "how's your DJing going?" And I said, "Oh, it's all right. I'm only making about $100 a week, but I'm doing something. I'm trying." And he said, "Well, look, man, I need another worker." He had his own subcontracting thing going on. He subcontracted for a form working company, and he was doing quite well for himself as well at the time. He's since moved from Sydney to Queensland. Great friend of mine, doing quite well up there as well. So it's always good to hear. It's always good to know. But yeah, he called me and said, we were talking, and he said, "Well, how about you come work for me?" And I said, "Well, look, man, my situation, my arthritis, and that's a real tough job. It's a lot harder than plumbing, and when it comes to heavy lifting and physical labor, plumbing's as hard enough as it is for any man. It's not an easy job. So if I sort of couldn't do that, I don't know how reliable I'd be for you." And he said, "Look, man, I know your situation. I need an extra guy. You're a great friend of mine. Let me help you out. Come work for me." And he's obviously was going to pay me a lot more than that $100 a week. So that's what I did. I started with him the very next day. Worked with him for a couple of years. It wasn't easy. Took days off here and there. I felt like a bad friend, like I was letting his company down and letting him down. But he was very understanding, and he knew the situation prior to me working for him. So it wasn't one of those times where, the same old story. Oh, it turns out I've got arthritis. So he was very understanding. But things started to get a bit slow for him, and he had to start letting guys go, and unfortunately it got to the point where he had to let me go as well, which was understandable because we did get very slow. We went from working 5-6 days every week guaranteed to maybe 1 or 2 days every week, he had a few different guys working for him. So if he had 3 days work, he'd some of his workers would get 1 day, some of his other workers would get the other day, and so to speak. So at that point, and having always worked in construction, for the most part, besides the DJing and teenage jobs, I've worked at Hungry Jack's, which in America I think they call it Burger King. I worked at a toy retailer, Toys R Us. I worked at Subway, Eat Fresh. Toys R Us is, I think that's Born Under, and I'm 34 years old, so this is going back 15-20 years ago now. I worked at a nightclub and was into the whole promoting scene. I did some telesales, like call center work, before I started my apprenticeship. And ever since then, I've, besides the year of DJing, I always worked in construction. So when I saw all these trucks coming onto site to tip off whatever material, or to pick up whatever material they were working with for the day, I always admired the truck drivers in the winter. Like I said at the beginning of the video, in the winter they get to turn the heater on and stay nice and warm all day, and in the summer they get to put on the aircon and stay nice and cool all day. They can pull up to any service station or petrol station, gas station, depending on where you live, at any point in the day, go get a nice cold drink or get some sort of food. Although the bad thing about truck driving is you can only park where you can park. So you can't just pull over anywhere and get anything to eat, anywhere that a car would go. You've got to just go where you can park. So a lot of the time it's just the gas station, the service station, which they don't necessarily have the greatest foods there, or the most healthiest food. So I think that's why a lot of truck drivers in time start to put on a bit of weight. Me, I'm sort of in control of that, but it's very understandable, considering, ultimately you just bring your lunch to work, but in a truck, unless you have a lunchbox that heats, like I have a heater lunchbox, so you plug it into the what would you call it, your phone port for your truck. It works in cars as well, and in about half an hour your food's nice and warm, it's quite warm. So there's that now, but that's a relatively new thing in 2024. Going back a couple of years, there was nothing like that. So if you wanted a warm meal, generally you're buying it for lunch. And Sydney's quite an expensive place to live. People get paid fairly well here, but the way that it works out with taxes and cost of living, it's quite expensive to live in Sydney. So some people are scraping by, some people are living comfortably, but overall nothing is cheap. So, and things are only going up like everywhere else in the world, which that really bugs me. Like, it doesn't matter who's sort of the leader of the country, whether it be your prime minister, like in Australia we have a prime minister, or whether it be president. It's just, things keep climbing. Now, I don't smoke cigarettes, but for example, when I was a kid, my dad would go into like tobacconists. It's $6, $5 for a pack of cigarettes. Nowadays, you go into like a tobacconist, you're paying about $50. So let's say about 25, 30 years, more 30 years, closer to 30 years now. Tobacco has gone up in Australia, well in Sydney at least, has gone up about $45, $50. And I have, like, I don't smoke, but last I heard, that's how much they were, you know. It sort of opens the door for black market tobacco and, you know, other things like that, where it's like if they kept the prices down, but it's all tax. That's what it is. It's tax. The price of tobacco isn't going up to that extent. It's just the tax. So they're taxing everything. They got a bigger tax on beer, and there's a bigger tax, like all sorts of alcohol. There's a bigger tax on petrol, diesel. You know, all sorts of fuel, oil fuels. It's a real shame, really. It's a great place to live. It's very safe, Sydney. For the most part, you're not really going to get in trouble unless you get yourself into trouble. Obviously, there's always the freak of nature, just unlucky incidents. But besides that, you know, you're not really going to find yourself in any sort of complications unless you want to, and you know, unless you're stupid. That's not what you want. So generally a good, safe place to live, plenty of work opportunities, but just government, things like that, they make it really hard, you know. They make it really hard. You know, but that's just life in general. I think that's across the board. No matter what country you go to, you look at Venezuela and Lebanon at the moment, with their hyperinflation, and the money's worth nothing, and people work 1 month just to buy rice. You know, like, it's definitely not like that. So definitely very lucky in that sense. But you know, the way that this leadership's going, it's really only a matter of time. Like, you know, it just makes you think. Houses in Sydney, you know, you won't find anything less than $1 million. My parents bought their house in southwest Sydney for, I think it was about $80,000 back in 1983 or 1984. Since then, that house is worth in the 1 point whatever million. So it's great from that perspective that things have gone up. But then for the next generation like myself to buy a place, it almost seems unobtainable, almost unreachable. See the police over here. Policía. They're not the greatest around here either. But yeah, nah, like, houses are really expensive, rent isn't cheap. You know, it's kind of doesn't matter where you live or what you make. One way or another, it's all going to taxes, and the government's just taking it back anyway. So that's just the way it goes. I guess that's just life these days. You could go and live somewhere rural, you know, live off the land, as they say. And I don't think that would be so bad. But at the same time, you know, you really have to know what you're doing. Every day you got to go out there and catch your food, or, you know, build your shelter, and, you know, whatever primitive human beings used to do. You know, it really wasn't that many hundreds of years ago. Most of the world was, you know, sort of in that circumstance. Well, it's certainly become a lot more civilized since then, but you know, even with farming and things like that being, you know, upwards of 10,000 years old, as they say, but who knows what they really know. You would still have to, like, do a lot more than just going to the supermarket and, oh, yep, I want that piece of steak tonight, or, something like that. So, the world certainly is forever evolving, certainly changing. Not far from the tip now. I think this video will just go until we get there. I don't know if I should really be recording footage inside tips. Might need permission to do things like that, and right now we're just starting off, so I don't feel it's too necessary for that. I have one small video in a tip. Yeah, that's I don't think you can actually see any signage or anything like that if I don't name the tip or write any labeling of the tip in the video description and things like that. I should kind of get away with it, it's winter right now in Sydney. Coming towards the end of winter. We've had some nice days recently, and then the last few days it's started raining again. It rains a bit in Sydney, not too much, but you're definitely going to get rain in Sydney. You don't get any snow. The summers are extremely hot. Some days, you're getting your 40 degrees Celsius. Other days, you're always getting about, what would you say? You're always getting about, 32, 33 in summer. If it's any less than that, as they say, that there was the global warming, global cooling, climate crisis, whatever they call it now. I try not to pay attention to all of that because there's so many studies involved that kind of contradict that. Now, like I said, I don't really want to get too political, but climate change, that's what it's called. Don't want to get too political, but I mean, we all have our own opinions on things like that, I believe, so, as we say, each to their own. It's a bit of a saying in Australia, each to their own, which kind of means everyone has their own opinion. I don't know if that's a universal saying, or at least in English-speaking countries. I speak a little bit of Greek, a little bit of Spanish, nothing really else, a couple of words in different languages, but I can't really say that I can speak anything else. I'm a little bit hungry, to be honest. I wouldn't mind getting a coffee. Yeah. I actually have some family that live in the street right, but I don't know if they want to be involved in the podcast. Definitely not going to mention more than that. Yeah, if anyone's still watching, give me a comment or a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment about what you think of the camera angle and the footage. I think this is going to be a bit of a Bill Burr type podcast where I just sort of ramble on a bit and just talk about things that interest me, and hopefully other people find the same things interesting, and maybe they have similar views, similar opinions, things that can be sort of mentioned in comments. Oh, I agree with this, I disagree with that. We can engage. I'm not really one to be too easily offended. If someone has a different opinion. I'm into open discussion, talking about all sorts of random stuff. So, this is kind of just a bit of commentary while you watch the video of driving the truck. So, well, it's not really driving. I want to get the camera to be further back, kind of behind me, so you get a better view of everything that's going on. However, at the moment with the camera that I have, I can only really mount it to where it's mounted, so you can get a bit of a good enough view of the truck and what's going on. Just approaching. If you're from Sydney or you know anything about rugby league, I'm actually just approaching the Cronulla Sharks home ground, which will be, I think, a K or two up the road here. Well, almost caught an accident. You got to be careful on the roads, and that's one of the reasons why. But yeah, I'm a Bulldogs fan actually. Hope I don't get too many unsubscribers for mentioning. I'm born and raised in the Bankstown area. Played 7-8 years in the Canterbury comp. This has gone back 20-30 years ago now. But yeah, it's been a good season so far for the Dogs. Really really turned it around. I'm not a huge, Gus is alright. I don't like him as a commentary. I don't like his commentary on the telecasts, the broadcast, the games. I don't find him much of a commentator, but he's done a lot of good things now at the Bulldogs. He did good things at Penrith. I think he was at another team before that. Or I think he was with the Warriors for a bit, but I think he realised the Warriors, it's just not going to happen. I don't know. Warriors, they're not a bad team. They're up and down, really. They have some good seasons, then they don't. Used to think Stacey Jones was a good player back in the day. They haven't really reached the same success since those times, though. But yeah, Bulldogs. What can I say? We went through a big slump. I feel like, a fair few years ago now, maybe a decade ago, we got rid of the wrong players we got rid of the wrong players to keep. How could I say this? We got rid of the right players to keep the wrong players, and then we had a lot of salary cap issues. We had a few different coaches. Things just kind of continued to go in a downward spiral. But last season, we didn't have the best season, but we showed promise. This season, I haven't caught so many of the games, but we're doing quite well for what we are. We'll definitely make the semis, and we've pretty much already made the semis, which is really good because the Doggies are doing well. I'm also an Arsenal supporter in the EPL. A die-hard Arsenal supporter. I could talk about Arsenal all day. Quality team. We've got a great team now. It's kind of the same situation with the Dogs and Arsenal, where both teams won in 2004, and then neither team have won their respective competitions since. But Arsenal's really bounced back. I think Arteta's a great manager. I was a bit iffy on him to begin with. I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of people were the same. But, that season starts this week. This weekend, actually. First game in Australia is 12 p.m. Saturday night. So, it's good. I've actually got a dinner Saturday night, and then I'll watch the Arsenal game, first game of the season opener. We take on the Wolves. So they're a quality team as well. Hopefully we win. We had a good pre-season. But yeah, I think I'll talk a lot more about the Bulldogs and about Arsenal and about other sporting things throughout the different videos, the different podcasts. Are approaching the tip now. So I think I might end this one in a minute or two. But this was just a run from Lucas Heights to Kurnell. From my company's job at Lucas Heights to a concrete recycling plant at Kurnell. Nice run. Lots of traffic through the Sutherland Shire. It's a bit of a hub. People around here kind of, you need either way you come into the Shire, you take a bridge that goes over water. So besides coming from down south, coming from the Heathcote way, which is sort of coming up from Wollongong, if you will. But here we go. If you see this blue sign on the left there, I don't know if the video captures that too well. There it is. Waste management plant. In a truck, you've always got to keep your eye open for your signs. It could be the difference between you finding a location you need to go to and not, or it could be the difference between you getting the right turn or taking the right turn or not, and being in a truck. The next opportunity you have to make that turn, it might not be for an extended time, an extended length of road, so you have to be careful. But here we are. So this is podcast 1. Thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll speak to you guys soon.